In this workshop, I'm going to be auditing 2 pieces of content. And what we're looking for is where are we positioning for freebie seekers and fence sitters versus, or instead of, premium buyers who are decision makers, who are change makers, who are committed to their change and to their journey. Where can we convert faster? So instead of where everyone else teaches you, oh, you need to have 50 touch points, right, before someone makes a sale, or you need to speak to them 100 million times, and you need to nurture them X amount of times before they'll actually buy from you. Instead, what we want is less touch points with more resonance, with deeper messaging. With the difference between a client paying you one time versus many times over and over again, right? And staying in your ecosystem. So that these are the points that we want to address today, so that we're not haggling, we're not justifying pricing, we're not stopping at price objections. Rather, these are addressed in our content. We're going to start with midlife coaching, and I've picked an offer post for this. And thank you for sharing with us. Okay. I'm going to ask the person to remember that this is not personal criticism. I'm just basically going to audit the text, okay? And give constructive feedback and ways to change it and ways to refine, not change it, refine it, okay? So the title opening is Your Body's Not an Asshole. I love this because it's like scroll stopping. It's like, what is she saying? Now, I am assuming that your ideal clients would have said something like this, that they speak this language and that this is their wording, right? For that to feel like, oh, like that's something I would say, right? They want to have that, you want to have that immediate reaction to the content. So I like it because it interrupts a pattern. It interrupts the scroll, basically, what's happening. It also adds in a little bit of your personality, and I can see how that also blends in. The way you write your content and is also an indicator of your personality. Some people use a lot of sarcasm because that's how they are, right, behind the scenes. Or some people use a different type of humor. That's who they are. So it's important that, especially in our line of work where there's so much proximity with the clients, right? I was just having a chat with a gentleman in the DMs this evening, actually, about that. Value alignment and personality match. I'm not saying we all have to be the same, God forbid, but we do incline or like certain character types to work with, right? And as coaches, as healers, as consultants, you want to be excited about the people that you work with and not go, oh, damn, I need to face that person today, right? That's not what we're here for. I know that a lot of us are here because the coaching, the healing, and the consultancy, whatever modality delivery you use, it's also part of a bigger mission and purpose. So I think that's key. That's important. I think what this indicates as well to me is that it signals contrarian positioning. So it's opposed to what mainstream marketing might say about your body failing you, your body being an asshole, your body not showing up for you, right? And so it is kind of starts setting you up with a positioning that's contrary to what the norm is. Now I'm going to move to the next section. So this is an offer post, right? It's a direct offer. That's why I've picked it up. And this is basically saying who this is for. What's cool is that you're opposing, so you're taking a positioning against fear-mongering of the mainstream menopausal story, which is cool. That's a positioning. I like that. What I'm not convinced on is that it's framed for women who want a clear understanding. Okay, this makes it non-urgent. This makes it passive. This makes it something that they, it's not something that they desire now or would pay high stakes or would pay high ticket for. Even if you're selling $500 offer in this moment for a one-to-one session, that's not the point, right? They know that from a single audit, they're not going to change their life unless your audit is really going to change their life. But it gives a plan. It gives what it gives. It's an audit and it's a plan. So instead we want to be speaking, instead of to the curious people who want to understand, we want to speak to the women who actually are looking for solutions. This is the difference between someone who's ready to drop in for a talk or a chat or a workshop to someone who's ready to invest. The purpose of me unpacking someone else's content is so that everyone understands the thought process behind this and what's going on, right? Because oftentimes we tend to borrow or use the same languaging, right? So what to look out for, what not to look out for. What is this signaling? Is it signaling to this type of person or that type of person? Is it signaling someone who still needs convincing of the work, or someone who's already convinced and knows that they need to do the work? Okay, so this is what's going on over here. Just side note. What would make this a more powerful opener is leaning in further on more identity qualifiers. What do I mean by that? The kind of woman who is, for example, women who refuse to negotiate with low energy, brain fog, or quiet resentment, right? That's a specific, you're including outcomes or you're including symptoms, but they're refusing to negotiate. So they're done with that. That's just an example. I'm not asking you to use that same words. We just need to look at like what is the difference, okay? Because people who buy to understand something, they would buy education, they would buy information, they would buy like a course thing. Whereas this is different. This is a one-to-one personalized audit and roadmap. So the missing piece here is we're attracting women who may still be questioning whether they need the support versus someone who knows that they need the support to the next step. Okay. I'm just gonna move into the next section. I think these points are great. They're very relatable. Okay. You want to know what is being blamed on hormones. The points are very relatable, and I am slightly confused on whether it's bullshit. The points are still calling out the mainstream menopausal story. And so if we're doing that, it's not clear. If we're doing that, I would like this to be more clear. So I would lean into why you're different to mainstream menopausal story, why you're different to the mainstream narrative. What makes this different? So what I'm seeing is in these bullet sections is that the points describe certain symptoms. Some of them are great, like the cartons of cottage cheese to get your protein in, like that's very specific, right, to what people may have recommended to do. But there's some over explanation in them. Now, what we do when we start to over explain, we're talking to like someone who needs more explanation. Whereas someone who's already on the journey already gets it. What this whole section is telling me is it's very relatable, but it says like she understands me, but we want our audience to be like, she gets me and she can lead me. So it's like you're describing the symptoms, but you're not showing like what's on offer here. She understands me gets us friend zoned. She understands me gets us like, oh, she's like me, which is great, but you also want to be the one who gets paid. She can lead me takes us to becoming the expert, the go-to expert, the obvious choice. High trust connection isn't built by proving. We want to build that trust and connection, but we don't need to prove to them that we feel the same pain at their level. You need to demonstrate that you understand them well enough to move them to the next part. I'm not sure if it was in this content or another piece of content where like we need to differentiate what we mean by empathizing and like validating people's pains and limitations, because one will continue to attract people who just need continuous reassurance and validation in their pain, and the other one is empathizing. Well, I see you, I hear you, I understand your frustrations, I see where you're at, and now we like this is the next step. This section I really highly recommend that you redo this post, because I think it's great, and instead we can take it from a different angle where if you want to compare, if you want to take a position in the market that is anti this mainstream menopause story narrative that there is, then like let's put it out there. So for example, you don't want more reasons to blame your hormones. You want this. You're done eating cartons of cottage cheese to get your protein in. And instead you want, what do they truly want? What is their true desire? Telling you not to stay up past your bedtime hasn't changed the way you wake up. Instead, you want to wake up feeling you want to be able to do as a result of a restful night. You see the difference? One is calling out the bullshit that they're tired of hearing, and the other one is what they actually truly desire. Adding more supplementations isn't changing your mood swings or your brain fog, for example. So I'm going to move on to the next section, which is basically your audit, the offering itself. The audit is your diagnosis and your plan. This is a get down to business consult, showing you exactly what's next without the menopause rhetoric. So you mentioned again the menopause rhetoric, right? So I'd really restructure this and lean into what is your menopause rhetoric. And you're talking about the menopause rhetoric. It would be great if we have what you're offering, what your methodology is, what your solution is here. We don't want to be the coaches who always talk like, oh, this is like everything else is wrong, but then we forget to talk about what actually we do, right? So what happens in this case, you attract people, but they always remain on the fence because they're not quite sure. They agree with you, they're relating, they're resonating, but they're not taking that next step because they're unsure, they're unclear of what is. So this creates like a vacuum. You're taking a position against something, but then you need to say what you're for. It's like the politicians always talk shit about the other politicians, but they're not really giving. Currently, that's what's happening here where I am in Nepal. Everyone's talking shit about all of the old politicians, but no one's really coming up with their like proper manifesto. Like, what are we voting for exactly? What are you standing for exactly, right? So like, this is not another jab at menopause rhetoric. What we do instead in this audit, we set the differentiating factors and link it back to the outcomes, link it back to their truest desires, which takes me to the last section, which is the actual offer itself. So instead of leading with price and minutes and sessions, I would lead more with the outcomes and desires, because again, premium buyers don't care if it's 90 or 120 minutes, or like maybe they'll care if it's a one-to-one session or a group workshop, but what are they getting out of it? They care more about that, right? So I would lead more with outcomes and desires, because again, they're paying for solutions. They're not paying for time with you. They're not paying you for minutes spent. They're paying you for solutions. I've had calls which I paid like $1,000 for, and I literally showed up for like it was 60 minutes. I spent half an hour. Like, okay, I think I got what I need. Thank you. End of story, right? So this reduces justification of price. This reduces and eliminates the need for explanation. This reduces any need for convincing people, right? You're positioning on the outcomes that they desire. So I would do that link where you do like, this is not another jab at menopause rhetoric. In this audit, we will and clearly specify what they will get from it and what they will do and the outcome of that, the advantage of that, the benefit of that, and then how it's delivered. One-to-one session, what your body needs, what needs to change, a personalized roadmap, $500, one session, end of story. Or you don't even need to mention the price, because if there is the link in bio or DM, they're going to see the price there, and then that's up to you. That's a personal choice. I don't normally, for low ticket, I put prices in my content. Before I move on to the next audit, because you're in the room with me, do you care to unmute and ask any questions? And we have the time today for this.
This was so good, Hannah. So it's so funny because you're telling me like on the points, like what they're actually doing, like it's actually just stating the problem and I'm not taking them all the way through it. And I'm thinking while I'm writing this that I'm taking them all the way through it. But now I see so clearly how it's like I've actually stopped halfway. And even like the point about I'm saying I'm not for the menopause rhetoric and I'm wanting them to see my side. And I think I'm explaining that. And I'm totally not explaining that at all. I'm really stopping at the halfway point and over explaining the first part without bringing the second half in. And I thought I was doing that the whole time. So I'm like both laughing at myself because it's so obvious once you went through the process and like, damn, that's so good and so simple. And even the points of you were saying, you don't want more reasons to hate your hormones. You don't want to be eating cartons of cottage cheese. Your supplements aren't going to help your brain fog. And then taking it all the way through to the other side of what the actual outcomes and potential results can actually be when you step into a totally different side of it. So yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have any questions. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Let's start by saying no judgment, because when it's our own writing and our own content, we really need that third person, that external party to like see things
Yeah.
without the bias, right? Because I'm so unattached, right, to your content. That's
Yeah.
why I framed like, please don't take this personally. I'm just like auditing it as I would audit any piece. But that really is that missing piece. These are the gaps that
Yeah.
we have you from like, oh, she's great and I like her content and she's wow and this is so good. This is so informative. Thank you, to like, where do I pay you? I'm
Yeah.
so ready for this. Like, that is the difference. It's also the difference between you being positioned as every other coach who's talking midlife. The difference between positioning yourself as every other coach who is in that niche, what I call the sea of sameness. You just start
Mhm.
sounding like everyone else. With these kind of things, now you start becoming the obvious choice. You become the go-to expert,
Yeah.
right? Midlife is describing a life stage, an age bracket,
Mhm.
a life stage, which is fine. What we want to speak more into is the psychographics. How are your ideal clients thinking, feeling? What are they saying to themselves and to their close ones? This is how we establish empathy through our content. This is how our audience, our ideal prospects, feel deeply seen, heard, and understood by you. Because people think that empathy means like validating their pain and their reality. But that kind of attracts just more people who want to stay in their pain and just want more reassurance that they're in their pain, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to move, that they're ready to
Yeah.
take action, that they're ready to do the work. So more on like who this woman is and all of the nuance versus a life stage tag. Because there are women in midlife who are perfectly fine being a victim to their conditions and their symptoms. And then there are women who are having the symptoms and yet they're living a wholly different life and have a different outlook, right? So belief systems, worldviews, opinions on this life stage, everything, that all of that should come through. And I'm sure it
Okay.
comes through your other content. I've picked on one piece, right? I haven't analyzed like all of your content.
Mhm. Yeah, but definitely even other pieces of content could use more of what you're saying for sure. So I can see where those threads are missing.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Thank you, Hannah.
My pleasure.